Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio. Now, the secondary theme that we've been doing on this channel has been the upcoming presidential race for 2020. And let's keep going with some of the libertarian candidates. It's still a giant question mark if political activist and radio host Darryl W Perry will try once again for the libertarian nomination. A lot of people like myself were really exposed to Darryl Perry because he was involved with the libertarian primaries and all the debates going on with the libertarians for the 2016 election. And, it was a very, entertaining group of people. They had, Austin Peterson, Dr. Mark Allen Feldman, rest in peace. And I didn't care much for John McAfee, but when you were listening to all these people, sharing ideas, it's quite, it's quite different than what you get listening to the Republicans and Democrats. In all seriousness, I hope that Darryl Perry will run again in 2020 because, he brings the sort of anarcho-capitalist viewpoint of the Libertarian Party, and he articulates it rather well. There are a lot of people out there that have, this platform, like Professor Walter Block, for example, who I believe does not articulate it that well, and even Stefan Molyneux is extremely, this very large sense of finesse when he talks about this stuff, but he has all this extra baggage that destroys his credibility. So I think that Darryl Perry, articulates this part of the Libertarian Party very well. They're just, there's some things where I would take exception would be he sort of refers to himself as a real libertarian, and, if you want to, and some of the other people who are running who don't have the exact same political view as him would be, not real libertarians. And if he wants to say somebody like Gary Johnson or somebody like William Weld or somebody like Rand Paul, okay, I follow you. I totally got you there. They spent their career as Republicans. But if you want to just say, someone else who is running in the Libertarian primary who's also been a lifelong libertarian, libertarianism is not just anarcho-capitalism. It's like a wide spectrum of views. We had the classic liberals and the minarchists and the constitutionalists like Dr. Ron Paul, and of course the anarcho-capitalists, and this, that, and the other. This is a political party, and as the Libertarian Party grows, you're going to see a very, very wide range of diverse opinions under the Libertarian flag. Look at the Republicans. Is somebody like Jeff Flake from Arizona a real Republican? Or if you don't like Jeff Flake as an example, what about Senator John McCain, the now late Senator John McCain? Were his platform and ideas completely in line with all the other Republican senators? No. But, he's still a Republican. This is just a political party. And as the Libertarian Party grows, they're really going to see this expansion of ideas. And it's not only going to be, concentrated in anarcho-capitalism. But, once again, though, I think that Darryl W. Perry is one of the people who articulates the anarcho-capitalist platform in a good manner, because he seems like somebody who actually believes what he's saying, which is difficult to find because so many people, who are involved in politics, they don't tell the truth. You ever heard of that? Politicians are liars. But, when you're in the primaries, it's this is about listening to people who have different ideas and people who want to raise ideas to the platform. And, it's one of the big notes about Darryl Perry's campaign is that he only accepted donations in cryptocurrency, in Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, or precious metals. So, he doesn't have some giant super PAC that is paying him hundreds of thousands of dollars to say this stuff. He's saying this, because he believes it. As somebody said, the way you learn about a candidate is not with hours of YouTube. You find out who is supporting them financially. And, that's the biggest way to go about it. Darryl Perry was involved, with a series of debates, but one of them was a debate with Sam Seder of a show called The Majority Report, which is, it broadcasts Monday through Friday on YouTube, but one of the things is, Sam Seder does a lot of debates with libertarians, and he debated Darryl Perry, and it kind of just turned into this, what's the word, explosion. And, they got into this weird notion of property. Because one thing with anarcho-capitalism is that in Darryl Perry's platform is that you would not have, a government. And like Darryl Perry is quite similar to Adam Kokesh in the sense that he wants to dissolve the federal government. But, Darryl Perry has also expanded to something that is larger than just that statement of dissolving the government. He's saying, if you don't agree with the government, you should have the right to secede. Like you could take your land that you live on. If you have a house that's on like a tract of land or something, you should have the right to secede and just say, I'm not going to use your roads, I'm not going to use your schools, I'm not going to use anything about you. I'm just going to be my own independent entity. And, he was debating this guy, Sam Seder, and the guy just brought up this point, and he said, well, who owns the land that you live on? And Darryl's response was, well, officially, nobody owns it. And what does that mean, nobody owns it? Well, in our current system, do you actually own property? Like, is there actual private property? What he means is, like, it's kind of this back and forth thing where, if you don't pay your property taxes for 3 years, someone will try to repossess your land and sell it at auction, and you know the drill. So it's kind of this back and forth in between, the private owners and the government. And Sam Seder's whole response was, oh, well, if nobody owns the land, how can you claim that it's yours and claim that you have the right to secede? And, it turned into a giant shouting match, but, it's some entertaining YouTube all the same. I thought that was just a much simpler issue from the anarcho-capitalist standpoint, and I'm really surprised that Darryl didn't come about it, from a different way, in the sense that, what do you do with private property in this? Well, for starters, you can say that a government is not necessary to issue any form of land ownership, and they get into the whole notion of property deeds. Property deeds are also not necessary to, signify land ownership. The nation of Niger did this for 31 years from 1960 to 1991, and, you'd be like, why are you bringing up the nation of Niger, which is a West Central African country? Isn't that, less developed or something? Well, the point is, they didn't have, property deeds for most of their land for decades. And the way they just did it was, he who tills the soil is the owner of the land. So it's like the person, who is occupying that land and is living there and taking care of it, they are the owner. And it can be established as something as simple as that. The second thing that you would say to that is, at the time of secession, if you were to actually go through with this sort of libertarian secessionist mentality, then you would be recognized as the owner by all parties. At the time of secession, the government would recognize you as the owner. You recognize yourself as the owner. All parties recognize that you are the owner of the land. So you ask that question, who really owns the land? You do. And the third thing about this is, it's just like, it's the whole notion of the government trying to take your land away from you is an illegitimate claim. And I think that's the actual heart and soul of Darryl Perry's platform. Is like, if you don't agree with, the laws, with the government, or even, somebody voted for someone and they lost, it's like, hey, I didn't vote for the government that's in office. I should have the right to secede and become my own independent entity. And if the government were to try to repossess your land, that is an illegitimate claim. They should not have the right to do that. And I think that's the real heart and soul of his campaign, in the sense that he was like, the government seizure of property is illegitimate and should not happen. But that was just one example that I thought, I kind of knew what he was trying to say. It's just, it kind of got, jumbled and discombobulated over the course of debate. Now, does Darryl Perry have a chance at winning the Libertarian primary and going on to the general election? Well, as Governor Gary Johnson will tell us, first of all, general elections are tough and they are brutal, and Gary Johnson was absolutely slaughtered. What would happen to Darryl Perry? Well, Darryl openly said, in an interview with, I just want to say it was that one, just called like presidentialcandidates.com or something. In one of his interviews, he said that, he's really just running to put up ideas and have people vote for the ideas. And one of the biggest things that he's opposed to is when you have someone who has been a lifelong Republican who has been distancing themselves from the Libertarian Party, he's like, it's just a shiny thing that they're using to attract votes. And for that one, he targeted specifically Rand Paul. And I just did an upload on Rand Paul with the possibility of Rand Paul running for 2020 as the Libertarian candidate. Not as a Republican like he did last time, but as a Libertarian. And on that note, I can definitely see where he's coming from. It's like, I mean, this guy is a career Republican, and yes, he does have name recognition and exposure, and, everybody knows what he's about because he's, well, let's face it, the son of Dr. Ron Paul. But, he has been a Republican for many years, and he's also not going to be pushing anything regarding the sort of more extreme views in the Libertarian platform, whereas Darryl Perry would. Darryl Perry is going to talk about, dissolving the government, talk about libertarian secessionism, and, also he's going to give some notice, give some awareness to the other independence movements that are going all around the country, like the New Hampshire independence movement and the Vermont independence movement, which I had never heard of until I started listening to, interviews with Darryl Perry. Darryl Perry was also the first one to ever tell me about the state of North Colorado, that the northern part of Colorado wants to become its own independent state, the 51st state in America. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I think he has a slim chance of winning the general election, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that he has to say. I mean, I just think that it's nice to hear a variety of opinions. What would be the point if we had a Libertarian primary and everybody sounded like Gary Johnson? Wouldn't you just want to shoot yourself in the head? I mean, it'd be like, what would be the point of having 5 candidates on stage that are all giving, relatively similar statements? I mean, I think that the Libertarians really need to be incorporating this wide variety of viewpoints, and they need to talk with constitutionalists, and they need to have, people representing the anarcho-capitalist sections of the Libertarian Party. Why? Because these are genuine things that people are supporting. And, it's like these are genuine things that are part of the libertarian movement. I mean, there are many people out there that definitely have this viewpoint. And at the very least, it's going to make for some entertaining television and YouTube. And it's going to be very interesting to hear these ideas when they are challenged. I even brought up one, that thing with debate with Darryl Perry and Sam Cedar. It can be, good to challenge these things sometimes, not for the people on screen, no, for, us in the audience, because it helps you to think in a new way, and it helps you to respond in a new way, and, you can sort of, re-examine some things within our own system. It's not to say that you're going to go become an anarcho-capitalist tomorrow after listening to a few speeches. No, but maybe we can start to think about things that are in our society, in our government, and, the notions of private property. And one very big thing to say, people like Darryl are against the wars. They're non-interventionists. And, Darryl Perry is an extremist when it comes to the non-aggression principle. You do not force yourself onto anybody else's land or property or anything associated with that. Non-aggression. And, yeah, let's talk more about that. Let's talk about ending the wars in the Middle East. Let's talk about, trying to prevent, drone strikes and bombings and, scaling back the role as the policeman of the world. So it's like, if we want to have more discussions on that, I say, bring on more people who are going to be talking about that. Libertarian, Democrat, Republican, Green Party, whatever. Let's talk about, peace in the world. Who's opposed to that? And definitely somebody like Darryl is definitely going to be contributing to this non-interventionist message of ending the wars. All right, well, that's all for me now. That's just a little quick rant on the possibility of Darryl Perry running again in 2020. I hope he does run, and somehow, if you hear this, Darryl, go out for it again, because you have something to contribute. Until next time.